Hi, everyone. I am Jenny Arden. I'm currently the Chief Design Officer for Zillow. Where are my Zillow friends at? They're right there, front row. All right. I've also had the pleasure of working at companies like Google, Airbnb, Nike. I heard a Nike woo. Yeah? You're here? Awesome. All right. I'm excited to talk to you today about why obsessing the details matters and what it means to create a culture of excellence. So before we get into that, some of you might be wondering, okay, what does a chief design officer actually do? I'll tell you the first order of business. I'm here at this company to really balance the conversation. You have the user needs, which I advocate for. Research also reports to me. And you have the business needs. And it's to make sure when we create a strategy, we're considering both at the same time. Also, in order to do that, you really need to know every single pixel. The chief design officer is accountable for the experience, and it needs to be great. Also, the design teams resolved many debates. I am responsible for making sure we don't just talk about it, we actually show what we're trying to do so people can really feel it for themselves. Other things I can say about CDOs in general is they feel really responsible for not only the outcome for the users, but the livelihood of employees. I mean, the buck stops with what we actually deliver, so you got to make sure it's great. We think about work structures a lot, making sure the right talent is in the right place. And I have to say, wholeheartedly, I definitely had the best job in the entire company. I love it. It's a great role. But a little bit outside the role of a CDO, a little bit about me. I grew up in Oregon among the hippies and rule breakers. I'm definitely one of them. Yeah, man. I've got two boys, Aiden and Logan, 6 and 8. I have a very friendly golden doodle. And if I wasn't a CDO, I would be a volunteer art teacher for public schools because I love teaching children how to express themselves through art. And I would own a bakery. I'm also an avid reader, and I'm a lover of stories. I just consume a lot of stories. But I would say my real passion for consuming stories is through movies. And props to Dolly for creating this image for me. This is the only AI image you're going to see in my deck today. But here's a few examples of some of my favorite movies to get to know me. As a kid, if I was homesick, I would watch the first 3 Indiana Jones movies back to back. That's how I sort of rest and recover. And I still do this today. Ready Player One is definitely my favorite escapism movie. I mean, what's not to love about a post-apocalyptic coming-of-age movie set in the metaverse? I mean, it's pretty awesome. The movie character I admire the most is by far Rey. She's got grit, she's got persistence, she's strong, and she also has like a little self-doubt, which all of these things really resonate with me. And my guilty pleasure is Working Girl. It's an obscure movie, but it's absolutely fabulous, and it's a ridiculous representation of women in corporate America in the 1990s. It's a great movie after a long week. But today, I want to talk about an animated film called Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. I was first introduced to this film during my time at Airbnb. Though this film was released nearly 85 years ago, it's the first of its kind in many ways. Most notably, it was the very, very first full-length animation picture film. So what this film taught us is how important it is to sweat the details. In fact, one of Airbnb's core values is every frame matters, which is kind of like an homage to Walt Disney and his process to make something truly great. So before I dig in, I first want to take you back to 1936.
Today in the Walt Disney Studios in Hollywood, there is coming into being something entirely new in entertainment. A motion picture called Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. The first full-length feature animated production in cinema history. For the past 2 years in the bustling studio buildings, home of Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, and the Three Little Pigs, their creator, Walt Disney, and his staff of 600 artists have been working intensively on the first feature, which will be released in January.
All right, you heard that. 600 artists, 3 years. That's what it took to create this film. They created 2 million sketches across this process, and the final film contained 250 final frames. And a huge part of this process was character development. They wanted to make something that felt lifelike and something as close to reality as possible. So they worked hard on creating individual characters and personalities that truly had like humanistic qualities. We take this for granted now because we all see like Pixar films and it kind of pulls at our heart and we really feel like those characters are real. Well, in the 1930s, that had never been done before. This is the first time it had ever been attempted. They also use a technique called rotoscoping, which is when animations are traced over live action footage, frame by frame. And what it does is it creates this sense of like realistic motion. All again, like this is all in service to make something feel lifelike and as humanistic as possible. They also went even further to figure out how to defy the limitations of 2D with the creation of what they call the multi-plane camera. This was made specifically for Snow White. Let's take a look.
On this moonlight scene, you'll notice that everything grows larger, including the moon. Now, when you walk along a country road toward the moon, it certainly doesn't grow larger like this, nor does it shrink in size when you walk away from it. The problem was how to take a painting and make it behave like a real piece of scenery under the camera. The trouble was we were photographing a flat two-dimensional background. So we set about making plans and blueprints for a new cartoon camera that would overcome this. The different elements in the scene were separated according to their varying distances from the viewer. This put the moon on a plane farthest away from the camera. With our original picture broken down in this manner, it is possible to control the relative speed with which each individual part of it moves to or away from the camera. But the moon remains absolutely still, and so it will always remain the same, neither growing nor shrinking in size. Of course, our cartoon camera does not shoot sideways, but is placed above and shoots downward toward the drawings. Since this new camera used many planes, we called it the multiplane camera.
I mean, these nut jobs came up with that in the middle of creating Snow White. I'm like, how did you come up with that? It's absolutely amazing. And they went even further to figure out how to really obsess the details. They actually put real makeup on Snow White on the films because they felt that that would achieve a more accurate representation of her beauty. So, despite all this effort, this innovation, this thorough thoughtfulness and resourcefulness, nobody thought it would be a success. All of Hollywood labeled it Disney's folly. And no one thought that anyone would ever have the patience to sit through 83 minutes of a cartoon. They also completely blew through their budget. It was supposed to be $500,000, ended up being $1.4 million, which is a lot. That's actually, in today's dollars, that's $25 million. But Walt believed in the vision, and he actually mortgaged his house to make sure the project could keep going. So, February 1938, the film is released, and here's what happened. It was a huge, huge success. I can't even emphasize how big of a success this film was. People absolutely loved it. It sold $8 million in tickets at 25 cents a ticket. That's a lot of freaking tickets. Scalpers were even reselling the tickets at 20x the face value of the tickets. Can you imagine paying $80 to see a movie today? This is unheard of. Over and over, critics kept on talking about this film. They couldn't stop saying how amazing it was. And I actually went through a lot of the archives and read a lot of these reviews. I'm going to read you one of my favorites. So it reads, "It is a curious fact, but it must be recorded, that last night's audience wept freely when the lovely princess died and was mourned by the dwarfs and her friends of the forest. Persons sitting on each side of us quite unashamedly used their handkerchiefs, and there was a dither of ill-suppressed clearing of masculine throats in the row in front of us. It is the best picture in 10 years. Walt was right." So what? You're like, great story. Walt's pretty amazing. Why are you telling me this story? Maybe you're thinking also, not everyone can be Walt Disney, so what does this have to do with me? I believe what Walt and his team experience is something I call the design golden era. This is a particular time when a group of creative-minded people are able to produce the best work of their careers. And once experienced, people often pine for those days to happen again. And there are many examples of this phenomenon. You can see it in the work of some of the most iconic brands in the world. So let me show you. So in the example that we just looked at, on the left, you have Mickey Mouse, Steamboat Willie. Only 10 years later, we see the outcome of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. You see the transformation of detail, artistry, realism. I mean, it's just absolutely remarkable how far it went. And as a side note, the proceeds of Snow White actually funded Disneyland. Disneyland would not exist if it wasn't for them sweating the details and creating Snow White. So it really did pay off. But let's look at some more examples. The next decade, Charles and Ray Eames. Together, they created groundbreaking furniture designs, these architectural works, and other creative projects that have had a lasting impact on modern design. So in fact, like the chairs you are sitting in right now are a direct lineage from what Charles and Ray Eames created. Nike. Nike has had many golden eras. But I think the most impactful is the collaboration with Michael Jordan and Nike in the 1990s. And what happened there is they took a completely different look at sneakers and shaped streetwear culture, turning sneakers into coveted design items. Apple, 2001, we get the iMac with fruit themes. I don't know if any of you remember that, but I was blown away when that came out. This was a bold and successful move by Apple to differentiate themselves in a crowded market, combining innovative design and marketing to create something that had a lasting impact on the personal computing landscape. And here's one that I got to experience firsthand. So on the left, you have an image of a big press release from Google in 2010 that they updated their logo. I mean, not a huge departure, a little bit of drop shadow missing, some skeuomorphic removed. It's kind of the same, right? Hardly any change. Then on the right, just a few years later, they released material design. So this was an effort done by a small group of designers who wanted to create a unified experience across Google's products. The concept was to give the UIs a sense of materiality. It was like layering construction paper. That was the original concept. Huge difference. Here's another one I got to be a part of and witness firsthand. The transformation of Airbnb's brand. In this design golden era, we went from this like kooky alternative lodging company to one that had a real human purpose, to help travelers around the world feel a sense of belonging no matter where they go. And just a couple months ago, I posed a question to my team. Are we experiencing a design golden era? On the left, you see screens from our current app, and our users are telling us they feel dated, they feel cold, they feel businessy. And on the right, you're seeing designs that we're going to be releasing throughout this year, which are intended to evoke the sense of possibility, progress, the joy of finding a home that is yours. And buying a home is likely the single most important purchase that most people will ever make. It has a lot riding on it, both financially and emotionally, and the app really, really needs to meet our users where they're at. So we're just getting started, but I can tell you, over my 2.5 years so far, I feel this like electricity of creative energy emerging from our virtual walls. So here's my question to you. Are you in a design golden era? How do you know? What should you look for? Well, let me break it down for you. Across all the golden eras I've experienced, there have been some common ingredients. Ingredient number 1, a leader with clarity. And by leader, I don't mean an executive. What I mean is anyone with a vision and a tenacious spirit that creates a following. So, to explain, this person has to be a little insane. They believe that anything is possible, and they push the limits of what the team can do, usually like just out of reach. They can also transfer their own energy and excitement for the work onto the team when they start to lose faith, when they start to get some like failures or setbacks. They can bring them back to that place of excitement and really help them keep going. And lastly, I would say this leader is a great communicator, but not in just one format. They figure out all the ways in which they can communicate why this matters over and over and over again until they get everyone on board. So back to Charles and Ray Eames. They weren't just furniture designers. They were also filmmakers and thought leaders. They had a vision that industrial technology could transform the world through more accessible and environmentally friendly designs. They bent the rules over and over, and they pushed modern design into something that's rooted in purpose and thoughtful editing. Ingredient number 2, a golden era requires a team that actually cares about the work. So for a golden era to happen, the team really does need to feel invested. The dynamics you'll see is that everyone is pushing each other. They all feel like they want to do something great, and they're willing to grow themselves to contribute to the cause. So I'm like channeling my own years as an IC, specifically my time at Google when I was on the search team. I worked in a small group that created these things called one boxes. One boxes is like when you open up Google and you search for certain terms like weather or a flight number, and something app-like shows up in the browser, that's a one box. We launched the weather one box first because it was the #1 query on mobile in 2010. And I remember sleeping under my desk just so I could be there when we pushed code to production. And these moments of excitement for the work and the celebration of our collective creation, these were the highlights of my career. So you might be thinking, hold on, what about AI? You talked about a team, people working together, but does AI play a part in this? And how does it fit into the golden era situation? So the reality is AI is really important and really helpful, and it can really help a team, especially a startup, get to something that's pretty good. But AI only represents what's already been done. To get to something great, you do need to have humans that understand where things are going in the future. Without human involvement, you're missing the nuance and the details that push the experience to represent what is next. Also, AI, as you know, because you probably use these tools, it rarely nails innovation, polish, fine details. It's still a little funky. Again, we learned from Walt Disney that these things matter when it comes to the final impression of the work. So ingredient number 3, a company that values quality. But before I jump in, I'm going to do something a little risky and try something out with you guys. Pull out your phones, please, and go to this QR code. I'm going to ask you to fill a 1-question survey. How much does your company value quality? And we might break some servers. I don't know. We're going to figure it out. And while you're doing that, I'm going to explain a little bit more. OK, I see most people got it. Great. All right, so this one is actually simple to explain, but it's difficult to achieve. Here are the questions I ask. Is the business strategy tied to the quality of the work? Does everyone understand what quality even means? And is everyone responsible and incentivized to make that happen? Those are the questions. So I'm going to see what you all said. I have no idea what this is going to give me. Whoa, OK. Pretty good, actually. And you guys are still voting. OK, I see you're bouncing around. We're going to go with B as being the leading answer somewhat. That's actually pretty good. I'll tell you at my own team, when I first started, we really thought the quality was not there. We really wanted to have better quality in the final thing that we delivered to our users. It was a huge point of frustration. What we did to address this is we made defining quality and measuring quality our team OKRs. We even went as far as to hire an analyst, a data analyst on our team to make sure that we could truly understand ROI, the return on investment, and the overall impact that our work could have on the company so we can have that conversation with the entire company. Thanks for playing with me on this one. All right, ingredient number 4, an environment at the brink of change. So for a golden era to happen, 3 stars need to be aligned. There needs to be a fundamental change in the human need that your golden era work actually is needed. there also needs to be this sort of uncomfortable feeling or squirminess in the company that they need their next chapter. You'll feel people be a little, like feeling like a little stale, or they're just ready to make something new. And lastly, users don't know what they want yet, but they're kind of pining for something. And especially your early adopters, they will jump at solutions once you build it. So to explain a little bit more about this, last month, I had a great conversation with one of my friends, John Hoke. He was the chief design officer for Nike for 34 years, and here's how he thinks about it.
One is that your enterprise understands that design is destiny, that design actually creates the future of your company. And that the second is design is dynasty, that if you repeat this over and over again, the destiny and the dynasty coexist. You make the future and you put that on repeat, which creates a covetability, a desirability of whatever it is you're designing that demands the next generation come back and pay attention. So design is destiny, that's our future. Design is dynasty, put that on repeat. Take it as a win every single season, every single year.
Heck yeah, design is destiny. Once the company sees that design is the one that's going to figure out what's next, open up business opportunities, that's when you know you're going to have a design golden era. All right, so here is your design golden era bingo card. How many do you think you have right now? 1, maybe 3, maybe all 12? Take a look at this and really think to yourself, are the ingredients there? Are they already there? What can I help with? And if you're thinking to yourself, gosh, I think I'm pretty far from this, then here's one more thought from John Hoke on how to center yourself on what really matters.
No one remembers a deadline. No one remembers a budget. No one remembers the fighting or the drama. They remember the output. And the output, when it's done really well, sort of transcends all those debates and discussions and just rests in an amazing connection that's emotional. And so I would fight for that, because at the end of the day, when you miss that mark, no one's going to go back and say, hey, great job on the budget or great job on the deadline. They're not. They're going to come back and say, this isn't good enough. And so we all have our own meters of standards within all of us. And so if it feels like it's below the standard, stand up for yourself. It's not good enough. It's not good enough. Go make it great. Take the time.
And look, yeah, completely agree. It's really easy to be pessimistic. I totally get it. I mean, take Zillow, for example. I work in real estate. It's competitive. Mortgage rates are at a high. I mean, the ability to get a home has never felt more elusive by Americans. Yet, what I also see is opportunity. 80% of all home buyers use Zillow. We can change the industry. And our company has decided that our strategy is to make the experience of home buying easier and more seamless. And our user needs and our company's success, they're intertwined. So to me, that is a recipe for a design golden era. So as you look back at your own work, do you see storms? Or do you see a glimmer of a golden era at your feet? I'll tell you, all the teams that I got to be a part of that have experienced that magic moment, they would have loved to know that they were in it at the time. Hindsight is 20/20 unless you look for the signs. So, master your craft. Push what's possible. Obsess the details. Go make it great. And I'll be looking out for all those golden eras you all will create. Thank you.